Hello everyone and welcome back to another Watson Brothers Team Stats video. I will be covering the stats for October 2025 today, but first I have a special guest here, a little bit different setting. This is Scott McInnes. He is a partner at Redpoint Law here in the Okanagan, one of our preferred real estate lawyers. And I've got him here for a little bit of a Q&A that I think he'll be able to answer some questions that maybe you as some buyers and sellers have in this marketplace. And even if you're not active in the marketplace as well, I think some of the answers will help you out. Scott, how are you doing?
Great.
Good. Yeah, if you want to tell our viewers a little bit about, who you are, how long you've been in the business, a little bit of a spiel to start off here.
Sure. So as Avery said, I'm a partner of Redpoint Law. Redpoint Law is generally based down in Vancouver. The only reason that a Kelowna office exists is because I moved myself and my family up here. Ian was my realtor when we moved here, and since then I've stayed in contact with him. And Redpoint is generally a real estate and business firm, so we help clients buy, sell, refinance. We also do commercial purchases and sales, and we do a lot of lending. And I moved up here in May of 2023, and since then we've been growing. We just hired our first paralegal. Nice. And we go to bat for clients getting deals done. So.
Yeah, he does amazing work for our clients. There's always success that comes out of his office. So I'll get right into it. Don't want to waste any time. My first question is going to kind of cover GST rebates. So it's all in the news. That's all everyone's ever hearing about, especially with the budget announcement earlier this week, talking about a push for new builds, push for builders to be, keep building. What is the GST rebate for first-time home buyers?
Right. Okay. So at the outset, it needs to be said that the GST rebate, as of now, is still proposed legislation. Mm-hmm. So it's making its way through the chambers. I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know where they're at in terms of the readings. Mm-hmm. But as it stands now, the proposed legislation will offer GST relief to first-time home buyers purchasers of new construction, mm-hmm. where the purchase price is up to $1 million. You get the full GST rebate, and then from $1 million to 1.5, there's a sliding scale of how much rebate you get. And some of the requirements are the contract has to be entered into, I think it's prior to May 27th, 2025. Yeah. There's also a technical rule there where you can't intentionally collapse a contract and re-enter it on the same terms, trying to then get the rebate. Mm-hmm. You have to be an individual. You can't have claimed a prior GST rebate, which is not really possible at the moment anyway. So yeah, all those things, once they're satisfied, you should get the rebate. Mm-hmm. Now, there is an old rebate, for like between 350 and I think it's 450,000 off the top of my head. There's a sliding scale there too. If it's below 350, you get the full exemption. Now that one is so seldom that it comes up because the purchase price is so small. Yeah. Or I actually just did one a few weeks back, but it had been years since I had done one, especially being based in Vancouver. Like that's like the price of a shed down there. Like, yeah. And so now that process of that rebate is all ironed out. We know how the forms look. Sometimes the developer has to play ball on signing the forms. Sometimes if they don't, then the buyer goes and pays the GST and goes and submits the form themselves. We don't have a lot of guidance on the new rebate on what the form looks like, how it's going to be submitted. Is it going to be the same where the developer plays ball or not, and then the buyer, do they pay it and get it back? I did find a section in the proposed legislation that does contemplate a retroactive application of GST if a purchase closes prior to royal assent. And I'm not sure if that's new because I looked a couple months back and didn't see it, but just getting ready for this, I did see that in the proposed legislation. So provided it doesn't change, if there's a buyer that closes May 27th to royal assent, their contract has to be entered into prior to May 27th. But if they close prior to royal assent and they pay the GST, as far as I can tell, there should be an ability to get the GST back. Yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell, though.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I know there's lots of questions around GST in the news, in the marketplace, so that's a good blurb. I think our clients are going to really value that. So next, title insurance. Title insurance is talked about. We're always asked questions about it. Can you give me a summary as to what it does and why might a buyer get title insurance?
Right. Okay. So title insurance, generally at an abstract level, will protect against defects in title. And on purchases, if you have a bank or refinance, if there's a bank, they're just going to require title insurance. There are some banks that will, occasionally take an opinion of the lawyer, or, I've seen some lenders take a strata plan in lieu of title insurance, but generally it's almost always required if there's a bank involved. And the bank policy, to add on your own owner policy, is so inexpensive, and it's only a one-time fee that most people just like. I've seen it be like $50 more, and it covers you for the lifetime you own the property. Generally, these are going to be things that are unregistered easements, any liens that come after title that affect your priority with respect to the lands, anything that makes it unmarketable. It's kind of the chances that someone are going to claim on a title insurance policy are pretty low. I've only seen one of my clients claim it in since I've been practicing real estate. And but you kind of think of it like a lottery ticket. If it hits, it's full coverage, and it will cover all of your legals enforcing it. And the one client that I had that did claim on title insurance bought a new townhouse, used townhouse that had new flower beds that were put all along the exterior. And after he moved in, the strata wrote to him and said, "Hey, those are non-compliant," and it cost him like $2,000 or something to remove. And he writes to me and goes, "Hey, can I claim on my title insurance?" And I didn't really know the answer, but I said, "Look, I'll send a note and we'll see what we can get." And they ended up covering it because the lawyer at Stewart played it out, and he said, "Look, if we don't cover it, Strata's going to assess a fine, and if you don't pay the fine, they're going to put a Strata lien on your title, and now it's going to affect your title." So they just paid it. One thing they did say is that there's fine print in the title insurance policy that says you have to notify them immediately, like before taking any steps. So in my case, my client had removed it and already suffered harm, but they covered it anyway. But that's just something to keep in mind, where if you're, always go to them first before you try to claim on it.
No, that's awesome. So pivoting over to buyer. So buyer enters into a contract. We've got our, classic 2 weeks or 2 weeks-ish of due diligence. What is something that you can give, legal advice to a buyer that they should do within that period of time in order to, help protect themselves more, or things to look out for? What would be, one tip while you're in that due diligence period?
A lot of it depends on the market too, right? So if we go back to 2022, when stuff was flying off the shelf, people were writing subject-free offers. They would get their pre-approval done and then just like roll the dice and try to close on it. I don't think we're in that market. I don't see that market coming back soon, if it ever comes back. Making sure you have the right subjects in there, right? So you want your subject to financing, you want your subject to property inspection if you want to go ahead with that. Even if you don't want to go ahead, that's good to have it in there, and then you can always waive it. But you have to balance on how many offers are going to be on this property. You want to try to keep your subjects low, and that's kind of in your realm to walk them through that. But once you get your offer and you see your subjects, making sure you're taking steps to fulfill them. If you have a subject to financing, you shouldn't hang your hat on a pre-approval. You need your broker to go through and look at this subject property and get the appraisals, get the green light before you remove subjects. Nothing worse than removing subjects and then finding out your financing isn't there. It could be a world of hurt. You could lose your deposit. So making sure your subjects are satisfied, right? And buying in this market, you also want to make sure you have that fire insurance clause, especially if you're closing
force
in
majeure. Yeah, that's an important one. I was in an ethics course, or no, it was legal updates last year, and they were talking about because it's all of BC, and they were talking about the force majeure clause, and a lot of people in the Lower Mainland had no idea what that was at all. And the instructor was talking about, well, in the Okanagan it's huge because of all the fires and fire season, but thinking about even the Lower Mainland, I mean, a lot of people think about the force majeure clause as just fires, and we think about that in the Okanagan a lot, but the Lower Mainland, that can also cover floods. If there's any sort of natural disaster that's happening that prohibits you from closing on the property, that's a really good one. I That's a good tip, because that's a really important clause. And even in times where, say it's now in October or in November, where there really isn't, it's not really our fire season, but because the radius is so large, there is the possibility that could stump you on completion day. So that's a good one. How about sellers? Is there anything a seller can do to prepare for listing their property, or prepare for, or be aware of when they're within a contract? Something's accepted. Is there something on the legal standpoint that a seller needs to be reminded of, or should look out for at that point of time?
I mean, the main thing is be aware of what your covenants or promises are in that contract. So, sometimes you have clauses where you need to have the pool inspected and provide the receipt, or you have to, replace, the fridge, or, you have these things that you have to do that sometimes you forget, and then it's like a week out, and then it gets to the lawyer's office and we're asking seller's counsel for proof that that's been done.
Yeah.
And you can't always get it done in the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to think about holdbacks, and
Yeah.
it just gets messy. Another thing is making sure you can clear your financial charges from title. So, if you have one mortgage that you bought and it was, 80% loan to value when you bought it 2 years ago, you need to think about, is your sale price sufficient to discharge that old mortgage?
Mm-hmm.
You also need to think about, are your lenders traditional lenders? If they're banks, like big banks, or even B lenders, it's pretty easy to get a payout statement. If you had to close on private financing, sometimes it takes a while to get the payout statement.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure your lawyer is aware of who your charge holders are and has requested payouts in time. And then the last one, if you're tying your sale to the ability to purchase, make sure that you've linked them properly, and that you're aware of how the interplay between your new purchase contract and your selling contract work together. So you're not in a position where you're forced to sell and you got to move in and wait to buy something.
Yeah, because that's a tricky, because we're finding that a lot in the marketplace, where there is so many, domino effects subject to sales, where, someone's purchasing a property, but they can only purchase it to sell it. And if those dates don't match up, you're right, it can kind of be a bit of a cluster sometimes, trying to figure out the perfect date to close. And you don't want to own the two properties at the same time, but you also don't want to be homeless. So it's an even mix. Well, I think that's it for us today. I think you kind of covered most questions that we get a lot of the time from our clients, from, to be honest, even the general public. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think we're
good.
Yeah.
I'm going to put Scott's contact information in our link below. That way you can, ring him up if you want to use him for real estate transaction. Again, he is one of our preferred lawyers here in town. So, if you are one of our clients, or you are one of our clients in the future, we'll probably recommend Scott as one of those lawyers. But, we want to say thank you. Watson Brothers team wants to thank you, and appreciate your time.
Yep, no problem. You're welcome.